Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Chamberlain. Also,
It's a beautiful. Okay, why am I the one using that word this morning?
it's anyone can use it. No, there's no patent.
It's a beautiful Monday morning. I'm Aya Makinde. Good morning and welcome.
Oh yes, indeed, and yeah, what a weekend it was. But just picking up on this particular report, where the NDLEA look, yeah, they've got a job of work. So much they need to
Not a small
grapple
one.
with, especially if you look at the prevalence of drug use, drug abuse in the country. And this has not gone unnoticed, but by even NAFDAC, they have tried to see how it could put a structure to all of that use of, medication, drugs in the country, trying to ensure that the pharmaceuticals and pharmacies all comply with certain rules and standards, which will be good to see. But ever since the NDLEA boss came on stream, he's gone round different areas, different stakeholders, as it were, trying to get their buy-in, because, he saw, the amount of work that they had to do. So he paid a visit to Kano State government's officials were equally there, and he's come up with an interesting suggestion. How that, they need to have drug tests before people get married.
There are those who have also posited that it's not only, it's like everyone who is anyone in Nigeria should first of all get their heads tested before they get into the office, because
Come on.
It sounds funny. When you say, okay, because, there are those who wonder, look, if you find yourself in office, like maybe you're a policeman or you're a last man official or you're a trace official in Ogun State or someone, and you take undue advantage of your position, maybe you really should have gotten your head tested before you got into office. But funny as that may sound, when you look at the historical trajectory of Nigeria, in the first place, what gave rise to an organization like NDLEA in the 90s, as far back as the 90s, Chamberlain? And you can imagine how many tests and permutations must have gone into that. And it was a time when cocaine use, heroin, it was just all over the place, smuggling of all these things and all of that. So it was about that time that the NDLEA came on board, and it was headed by military officials at the time. And they did quite a lot of work, clamping down on all kinds of drug busts on, those barons of the day. But you see, we have since transmuted, so to speak, from just that part. We found ourselves in a situation where, when we talk about drug abuse now, we're not only talking about heroin and cocaine. Look at what these guys are using here. Look at the ones that we just saw in the images here.
And if I could just chip in that, what the last MBS report, I think 2 years ago, thereabout, was talking about the fact that over the past year, about 15% of the adult population in the country, I think they said it was about 14.3 million and thereabout people had reported some sort of psychoactive substance use. And so they thought that figure was really high, which went above the global average.
And
so they were concerned.
And one of our colleagues was just also telling me, just before we came on, that one of the states reputed to have had the highest such cases, as you have mentioned, was Niger State at the time. And, so one just wonders why it is Kano State that is taking this. Maybe because of this visit that you mentioned that the NDLEA chairman
Every state has a role to play.
Have their roles to play. So this visit, was just to bring attention to that fact that when people take these, psychoactive medications, some of them actually go out of it. They try to rehabilitate and get out of the fray, only for maybe after some time to get back into it. So just imagine that you got married to someone and you don't know what the person has been through. And then the person just happened to be eventually someone who has had battles with drug abuse, and whose, of course, the reactions to menial issues could just be combustible. I think that's one of the things that the NDLEA chairman is talking about. And, what's interesting? 2 clerics were there at that meeting. and also lend their voices to it. So how far-reaching would that be? It would be good. I mean, if that kind of thing can be considered, but how far-reaching will it be? That's a question, isn't it?
I don't want to say it will be good. I mean, there's so many things. You don't just drop. Much as, yes, the agency wants to do as much as they can, but do we have the requisite structure, the base with which to enforce and address that? How many times has the FRC talked about breathalyzing drivers who they think, I mean, they need to find out how people are driving under the influence, all those DIU offenses. Do we have that? Are they, it's a lot of challenge. And so when we keep talking about, harping on how we need to ensure that, we have those institutions that function, it's going to be a challenge.
One other thing, while that is an institutional approach to it, how about individuals? How far have we gone with our moral landscape to try to take personal responsibility for these things to ensure that they don't happen?
What's the standard of measurement from that? That's usually subjective.
I know. I mean, for instance, I saw a movie over the weekend. It's a new one by a Nigerian, and I think the movie Swallow or something like that. And it was just talking about the fact that when you find yourself in a precarious situation as an adult, just go back in time. Try to recollect some of the things, some of the moral suasions that your parents gave you, your guardians gave you. What are those things that you were told that you would remember that make you say, no, I'm not going to do this because of this that I remember. No, I'm not going to do this because of this that I remember. So talking about the moral, the yardsticks to measure those things, it is it's personal. It's something that the person has to take personal responsibility for. But how many people are willing to do that? So that the moral suasion. Many of us have considered, what's the job of the NOA in all of these? Maybe there's a role for the NOA also there. Try to persuade people about this because those messages were awash in the media in the 90s.
I don't know if the NOA can ever have the kind of impact that the NDLEA desires in this one because of how people perceive things that have to do with government. It's usually this us and them kind of scenario. So if they don't trust such institutions, they can't buy into any of those messages. And besides, this report that was cited, the one by MBS and UNODC, they excluded alcohol and tobacco use. So, but we know that the alcoholics who equally need help. And then tobacco has us. So look,
but let's not forget, and I'm sure that the NDLEA is also looking at that. And as governors, I expect, why do people take drugs? Why do people want to numb their realities? Because that's essentially what it does.
And there are certain points where those things are prevalent.
Yes. So have we been
motor parks? FRC knows as much. They try to do what they can with that one.
They always go there.
So there are several people.
So why do people take those things? Have we been able? Many people will attribute some of these things to poverty. But these drugs aren't cheap. So how do these things happen? So I don't know really. It's a mixed bag of things. And you talked about the fact that governments at various levels have their jobs cut out for them. How effectively we are able to tackle these issues, that's left to be seen because a good number of these people are young people. And they're just waiting for us
even this report talked about they're between ages of 25 and 39.
The report we're about to see now says they're between ages 16 and 64. Take a look.
Or a drug user.
The ever-busy commercial city, Kano, with its huge population of young people, used to be rated as the state with the highest number of drug abusers in the country, as 1 in every 6 persons in Kano is said to be a drug addict, especially those between the ages of 16 and 64 years. And that's according to the NDLEA. This worrisome trend has led to the rise in social vices in the state, with adverse effect on many homes, which is why some rehabilitated drug addicts at the NDLEA Kano Rehabilitation Center describe drug addiction as a destroyer.
It affects me in various ways. One, I have a problem with my wife. Maybe she made a mistake, I corrected her. She would say that you too, you are into drugs. Did I say that you are wrong? Or maybe you are acting under the influence of drug.
one of my friends came to me and asked me, let's go and find the money so that we can go and take that drugs that we are taking. We went there. When we went to the house, we went to the house that we are going to take the money. We find that there is one small girl inside the house, and nobody was there. It's just the girl. The story is very bad. It's very bad. It's very bad because we did so very bad things. I can't even share it with you.
Governor Umar Ganduje, who says the high prevalence of drug abuse has reduced, believes more needs to be done in tackling the menace.
In terms of the status, I think now we are maybe number 6, 7, 8 or so. We are no more number 1 anyway. But that is not good enough. We'll continue to do our best.
The chairman of the Nigerian Drug Law Enforcement Agency, General Mohammed Buba Marwa, is proposing that one of the ways to curb drug abuse and addiction is to subject intending couples to drug tests and evaluation.
bandits,
two different things, aren't they?
food, fuel, hard drug suppliers will supply them, right?
The supplier doesn't.
So how do
You're
they
assuming
get
that the supplier might have volunteered information to tell them where they are?
the suppliers? Shouldn't the suppliers volunteer information to the police
But it's not, you never can tell if they have.
or not?
You know how criminals can be. They
Anyway,
may not volunteer. They may want
what
to
you
die
have.
with the information.
That's what you have right there. There's this one on the bottom strip. Living on a mountain could protect you from stroke. It's according to a study. Find it on page 31 of the paper today.
Well, look at Vanguard next. Alarm as FG chokes private sector out of bonds market FG raises 4.7 trillion naira as corporates raise 802 billion. Analysts recommend options on private sector debt capital. Risk of sovereign defaults, economic nightmares increasing. Use of debt as financing to careless, described to experts. So something that they really need to pay attention to, to ensure that things are addressed and in proper perspective. Terror in Newi, that's what you see at the bottom strip. 2 dead, FRSC, DSS offices, Igboke's house burned. So that you also see at the bottom strip. Not exactly a good scenario right there. But if you go take a look at what's on the back page, Vanguard Sports. Anfield thriller, De Bruyne rescues points for visitors as Liverpool and Man City play a 2-2 draw. Several other stories on that back page there, and that's Vanguard today.
A quick look at the Abuja Inquirer will reveal school punishment. Police beat up detained teacher in Abuja. Question is why? Find the details on the front page. Continues on page 3 of the paper this morning. And right under that picture, Pandora Papers, powerful rich Nigerians named in biggest offshore data leak. More of that on the front page. And right above the nameplate, why Nigeria will survive, Adeboye. Find the details on the front page. Continues on page 3.
So, wow. The Guardian is next. 300,000 shareholders abandon dividends over inflation red tape. So, this will have its effect, of course. Unclaimed dividends now 170 billion naira could hit 300 billion naira if not reversed by 2025. FBN Holdings, Nestle, Nigerian breweries top firms with unclaimed dividends. Operators say development undermines sex effort market growth. Economists urge FG to tackle economists urge FG to tackle causal factors, focus on growth-induced policies. You know, they've said this time and again.
But you see, that part about dividends being abandoned by shareholders, it's been on for a long time. You remember we had a conversation with someone, from the arbitrators here, and he was talking about that red tapeism as a major inhibition to that, how that many people will not even go simply because, you have to bring this and bring that and bring this and bring that, and even after all of that, and some of the shareholders have died, left these things to their next of kin, and this is what we still have. Is there a way to simplify the process, really?
Well, I guess we'll wait and see. But if this is anything to go by, resident doctors may call off strike today. So many will be hoping that happens. But then you equally find 5 northern states join FIRS in VAT dispute against Rivers, Lagos. PGF DG says Sanwo-Olu's alliance with Wike on VAT highly disturbing. It's about economics here. Warns against breakup of APC over power shift and VAT. FG to begin hearing on new revenue allocation formula today. Remember we had that conversation as to things that Nigerians ought to begin to consider as, if not the major factor in electing leaders across board. Who can fix the economy? Who's got the best policies or best blueprints to fix the economy at whatever point in time that they seek election into office?
Maybe it's a good time to also call on those in the private sector who have considered politics a dirty game to get into the kitchen and clean it.
Well, politics is not necessarily a dirty game,
just saying,
but the people who play it.
Those who say that politics is a dirty game.
That's why we're putting this against those who say it.
Exactly. Get in the kitchen and clean it. Because before you can clean a plate that is dirty, your hands will get dirty. Then you put soap in your hands and you put water and then you clean everything
I
together.
wonder what the soap will be in this case.
I'm just saying, just get in the kitchen and clean it up, because one bad policy from someone who doesn't know what to do will upturn your business. I mean, it's no rocket science. Okay, so that's just that. Because that's exactly what's happening in China, or in Ghana, it would seem. On the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning, despite diplomatic interventions, Ghanaians resume hostility against Nigerian traders. 3,000 businessmen threatened, over 3 billion naira lost. As this one in parenthesis, government must act on legal, political, and economic technicalities. And there's a response so far from the Diaspora Commission. We are not aware of recent onslaught. Find the details on page 5 of Daily Trust newspaper this morning. And right under the nameplate, worry over acute shortage of airworthiness inspectors in airports. We should. VAT row, more northern states team up with FIRS. It's funny, because some states are for, some states are against, and we're all members of the Nigerian Governors Forum. Anyway, I'm not just...
It's just democracy.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I'm
They
just
want
saying.
to test the laws. Nothing wrong with that.
I agree. But don't we all sit down in the same meetings to look at some of these issues together?
Well, yeah, they can do that, but if they end up not agreeing, so they have to just perhaps find a way. Well, who knows? Maybe at the end of the day, they may still have to go back to the negotiation table and sort this out.
Especially with the issue you raised on the front page, where the FG is considering a review of the sharing formula.
No, I don't. RM, Revenue Mobilization and Allocation Fiscal Commission?
Well, it's a federal government institution. So, school children in captivity, a federal government college burning Yori 110 days after. Bethel Baptist High School, Kujama, 93 days after. Daily Trust is keeping count.
Okay, look at Daily Times next. Opposition unfairly portraying APC Buhari in bad light. That's ascribed to PGF. Says opposition parties taking advantage of passive official communication by APC and FG. So he admits there that it is passive. But, I mean, what do people do? If you see a lacuna, if you see an opportunity, you take it. That's what they did in football yesterday. They saw the opponent's weaknesses. They took it because they wanted the all 3 points. And perhaps it's the same mindset and principle. So if you want to be formidable, then, show up your weaknesses.
Well, Nigerian News Direct has this one. Steady increase in oil price. Others drive foreign reserves to 20-month high. How high is this high? The details you'll find on page 2 of the paper this morning. And so many other issues. Domiciliary account balances estimated at $16 billion.
I hope somebody's not eyeing that. I just hope so. Those are people's money, so let sleeping dogs lie.
It's ascribed to the CBN. So.
Why isn't it being ascribed at this crucial point in time? I just hope so. Well, you know how some of these things can be. Because when you begin to get these kind of stories, given the war has made the round over time, you thought, oh, is somebody thinking about this? Remember that was the same thing with that unclaimed dividends and what was reported that government was thinking about doing with them.
This thing you said is a long time coming, because a number of people have been, just over the weekend, someone was saying there are rumors fluttering.
Yeah, they better stay as rumors. Because sometimes you wonder how these rumors get started in the first place.
Well, it's what they call flying a kite.
You remember the pension funds too? And what they suggested with the pension funds? Much as, but look, a different matter entirely. Well, there you go. That is it with a look at some of the dailies here this morning. We're back in a moment. Do stay with us.
It's a joint meeting of the northern governors and key traditional rulers from the northern states. And the meeting place is the government house in Kaduna State. The Sultan of Sokoto and the governor of Kaduna State raised concern over the insecurity situation in the north.
And I believe we're always ready to partner. I'd like to thank some of the governors that we've known, or even all the governors who have done a lot to unravel the problem of security in our various states.
Our region faces serious challenges. The economic situation in the country has affected us. The insecurity has destroyed rural economies, and many other challenges about federalism stare us in the face.
After several hours of meeting behind closed doors, the governors resolved that the call by their southern counterparts that the presidency be zoned to the south is unconstitutional. According to them, the 1999 Constitution as amended states that an elected president must meet the constitutional requirements, which include scoring majority votes and also score at least 25% of the votes cast in 2/3 of the states of the Federation. And nowhere is zoning allowed in the Constitution.
The forum unanimously condemned the statement by the Southern Governors Forum that the presidency must go to the south. The statement is quite contradictory with the provision of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999 as amended, that the elected president shall A, score the majority votes, B, score at least 25% of the votes cast in 2/3 states of the Federation. C, in the case of run-up, simple majority will win the election.
The governors also react to the controversy on who collects value-added tax, a matter which is currently before the Supreme Court.
The Northern State Governors Forum considered the ongoing national debate on collection of value-added tax, VAT. As responsible leaders, while we are concerned by the fact that the matter is sub judice, we, however, for the purposes of educating the public, make the following observations. A, the judgment of the Federal High Court calls to question the constitutionality of VAT, withholding tax, education tax, Niger Delta Development Commission, National Information Technology Development Agency, 13% derivation, National Economic Development Council, and many other currently levied and collected by the federal government of Nigeria and the Federal Inland Revenue Service. B, Rivers and Lagos State government had enacted their own VAT laws, and the Southern Governors Forum have expressed support for this course of action. C, VAT is being confused by these state governments as a sales tax. If every state enacted its own VAT law, multiple taxation will result in increase of prices of goods and services and collapse in interstate trade. Until and unless the Supreme Court pronounces judgment on the substantive matter between Rivers State and the federal government, the matter is sub judice, and Northern State Governors Forum would respect this.
This position conveyed by the governor of Plateau State is unanimously agreed to by the governors of the 19 northern states. It now remains to be seen how their counterparts in the south will respond to these strong views from the Northern Governors Forum.
In line with Section 14, subsection 2B of the 1999 Constitution as amended, the security and welfare of Nigerians continue to be the prime focus on which programs and projects of our government revolves. Therefore, as a government, we are ready to arrest and prosecute all persons inciting violence through words or action. Our resolve for a peaceful, united, and one Nigeria remains resolute and unwavering. That said, our hope is not to fight for peace. We can always settle our grievances peacefully without spilling any blood. I will therefore take this opportunity on this official day that symbolizes the unity and oneness of our great nation, to ask all Nigerians to embrace peace and dialogue, whatever your grievances. The seeds of violence are planted in people's heads through words. Reckless utterances of a few have led to losses of many innocent lives and destruction of properties. Such unfiltered and unsubstantiated lies and hate speeches by a few evil persons must be stopped.
Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Well, yes, indeed, we'll be joined now by Senator Ibrahim Shekarau, former governor of Kano State and former minister of education. But just before we get to him, I'd like to also let our viewers know that some news coming through is that the NARD have suspended the strike. But we'll get you more updates on that as we progress. But let's get on to the Senator. Good morning, Senator. Thank you for joining us on the program today.
Good morning, Chamberlain. How are you?
Well, doing great, yeah, thank you. Well, I haven't listened to the president's speech over the weekend and some parts of it this morning. Of course, there will always be several views and perspectives about what this speech, was about, vis-a-vis what people consider the reality on ground, even though they say perception is some people's reality. But from your perspective, what do you think of all of this?
Well, I think, Mr. Chamberlain, on the whole, I congratulate the president and the entire citizens of Nigeria for attaining this period of our 61st independence. Mr. President's speech, by my assessment, is encouraging and reassuring, especially on the area of insecurity that is ravaging virtually every part of Nigeria. I think this, taking this as top priority issue, and Mr. President even referred to the constitutional provision to remind Nigerians and remind himself indeed that the issue of security should be top priority for his government. And from the recent actions that we have seen by the various armed forces, particularly in the hotspots areas in Zamfara and some other states in the southeastern part of Nigeria, has reassured the citizens that the government is really moving forward. I think even though the problem is still very much on the increase, but I think the effort being made and the newly acquired weapons by the Air Force, the new aircraft, the jet fighters, and the acquisition of many more equipments and facilities by the government seem to be reassuring us. The only thing I will add is that various governments, particularly at the state level, should try to involve and create some mechanism to involve the communities. Most of these things are happening in the rural areas, and we need to bring in the community leaders. And security is largely about information, intelligence gathering. And unless we use the people on ground to get the information, the movement of the bandits, their operations, the armed forces may not be hitting the right targets. So I think on the whole, while we sympathize with the situation and we sympathize with the various communities that are facing these challenges, I think we need to support the government and encourage the government to do more. A lot more need to be done on the whole, I think.
You know, but Senator, much as in that speech, he did say that the last 18 months has been the most challenging time. He even doubted if we've witnessed any such challenge in the history of the country. But, you know, for the several areas, several parts of the country who are feeling the pinch about security have consistently, you know, looked at certain areas of things and suggestions of what needs to be done. And almost quite a number of those things, or a number of them, feel that it's, you know, not been adhered to or it's fallen on deaf ears, and actually a lot could have been done. So is it understandable where many think that, look, in spite of all of those that they've reeled out, what they're trying to do, the results on ground are completely different to what is being said?
Well, I quite agree that the challenges are mounting by the days, but I also understand that the security architecture is continuously being reviewed by the government. And a lot of people are showing their concern, a lot of efforts are being made. I am aware, for example, in the Senate, the various committees responsible for various security issues have been meeting, and a lot of suggestions are almost on daily basis being dished out. The committees have been inviting the service chiefs, having discussions, and we go back to our various constituencies, discussing with our communities, taking suggestions and recommendations and rubbing minds. Some of these things, certainly you don't do them on the street and on the pages of newspapers, but I am aware that a lot is being put on the table as far as continuous reviewing of the security arrangements and the challenges. Agreed, nobody is in doubt that within the couple of months back, we have seen very serious security challenges. But I think I'm very optimistic that with all these efforts, with all the concern, we will be getting somewhere. I'm not very pessimistic that we are not going to get it right, but it is gradually being addressed at various levels.
Find out in this distinguished senator is that, you know, in the president's speech, many were looking for some measure of hope, while others feel, well, it looked at the issues, the topical issues, as opposed to a visionary statement and all those things. But, you know, one thing that gives a number of people concern is the fact that youths are seemingly ignored generally. And in that speech also, the president said he will personally do everything he can to bring in more youths into government. The question that I'm just wondering, you know, about concerning that one is it just left to the president alone to do that, the federal government alone to do that, or it is something that should be taken in our psyche as a nation, find a way to ensure that we bring in the young people into the sphere of things so that they can be well prepared to take on the responsibilities of the leadership that will definitely be thrust on them in the near or far future?
Well, I quite agree that the issue of youth restiveness is a very serious challenge. I think the pronouncement by the president that the government is concerned, the government is determined to look into the issue of youth development, youth growth, youth employment is very reassuring. And I don't believe it's going to be just the responsibility of the federal government. The business of keeping the youth busy is virtually everybody's responsibility. Federal government, state government, local government, community leaders, religious leaders. It is true there is a very serious challenge of unemployment. And as we always say in my constituency of education, you either keep them busy or they'll keep you busy. And I think this is exactly what we're facing. We must continue to see how to keep our youth busy, and so that they don't keep us busy by the insecurity challenges and the various restiveness. So I think the president's statement is like reminding all of us that we have to see this issue of youth engagement in useful commitments. A lot of issues need to be initiated. I have the feeling that we need to find a way of reassuring the youth by inventing and institutionalizing issues of skill acquisition. It's not just enough to go to school and finish off as a graduate in various fields. In addition to that, we need to put in place skill acquisition processes so that apart from the various certificates someone that has been to school will acquire, you will need to have some skill, some trade that you need to use to really be self-reliant and be self-employed. And it's not just even the issue of those that go to school. We have to go back to the rural areas. What are we doing to engage the youth on our various lands in farming activities of the various sectors of the farming sector? So this is a challenge, not only to the federal government, and the fact that the president has recognized this and has mentioned this is like telling all of us that, yes, this is a problem on the table and all hands must be on deck. So my view is that to address this issue of youth empowerment, youth involvement, the government is always expected to show the way, to lead, to bring up policies and programs so that the various communities will be organized and initiate various ways of getting the youth involved. So I quite agree it's not just the business of the federal government, but the government has to show the way, the government has to provide the enabling environment through policies, through programs, and to really encourage the various community leaders, the various religious leaders, the various leaders, even within the youth, to engage them. We have very many talented youth who, given the opportunity, will really contribute towards the growth and development of our communities and Nigeria as a whole. So I think it's not just the business of the federal government, it's not just the business of Mr. President, but the responsibility of all the government is to really create the enabling environment through policies, through programs, through possibly even legislation. Right now, I have on the table, I'm considering and trying to see how we can propose a bill for compulsory skill acquisition programs, so that after graduating either from secondary school or from the university, you don't just jump into the market of unemployment. You must go for some training, whether 1 year or 2 years, to acquire a certain skill. We have vast opportunities across the country if we really engage the youth in various skill acquisitions, some training within 6 months, 1 year, 2 years.
Right.
Many of them will even prefer to be self-reliant, using the skills they have acquired than even waiting for anybody to employ them.
You know, Senator, governments at different levels always want to start and finish their projects within, their own time of election, where they were elected. When you speak about issues that need to be initiated or programs that need to be initiated, how much time, or do you really think that this government can initiate such projects and get it completed, especially now that we see a lot of jostling going on, the northern governors saying one thing, southern governors talking about zoning. So, and I know you have spoken about that some time ago. Has your views changed in any case about what both sets of governors are talking about now, zoning?
Well, Chamberlain, it is very unfortunate and very disappointing. I feel ashamed that we've gotten to that level, level of reducing national issues to a kind of gang-up arrangement. It's not going to be in the interest of democracy, in the interest of our growth as a nation. Southern governors ganging up, northern governors ganging up into one thing or the other, as if we fighting one another. If it were governors of APC, governors of PDP, governors of whatever party are coming together to discuss issues that will put on the table before their political parties or their manifestos, the constitutions of the various parties, that is a different matter. But I'm afraid we are gradually reducing issues to regional matters, and it's certainly not going to help us. Rather than they being busy talking about all of these challenges, I would have preferred seeing them uniting as a team of governors and coming up with proposals, coming up with common positions on various national challenges like this insecurity, like the issue of education, like the issue of agriculture. We have quite a lot to learn from one another across the Federation. But this issue of spitting fire as to southern governors saying it has to be here, southern governors saying it must be here. You see, my idea of balance in which you slightly referred to, I still hold the view that we need to carry every part of Nigeria along. And democracy and the process of the democratic process does not require all the time you must have specific laws in the Constitution or various laws being promulgated. As I mentioned a number of times, you recall I said there is the Constitution of common sense. These are issues that can be resolved through some understanding, through discussion, through cross-fertilization of ideas. But a gang-up which cut across, regardless of the political parties, throwing away the party platforms and ganging up, I think is going to create a very bad blood for all of us. I don't support this, and I condemn it. It's most unfortunate, and it shows that there is no cohesion, there is no understanding of what we are even into government for. It's not about fighting whether you are in the north, in the east, in the south, or whatever. The issue is we get together to discuss how do we move forward. I've said it a number of times, Chamberlain, that there is no state in Nigeria today where you will not find hundreds of capable, qualified people of high integrity that can lead us. So why are we losing our senses that it has to be this side, it has to be that side? I think these are matters for the political parties, not regional gang up. I think this is most unfortunate, and I condemn it. I don't support this, and I urge and advise the governors to really get out of this mediocrity, this it's myopism, this reducing of our leadership to regional crisis. This will be bringing us hundreds of many years back.
It's curious,
I don't support this, and
my apologies. It's curious that you called it so many times. You called it a gang up I'm just wondering, what do you expect them to do? Is it that there isn't enough understanding of the issues at play, or you think there is some other script being played by the proponents of these ideas?
No, I think both could be possible. It's either most of them don't seem to understand the kind of tension this kind of position is likely to heat up in the Federation. And I would not be surprised if there is some mischievous, hidden agenda behind it for some selfish interest by either individuals or groups who probably must achieve their goal by all means. Is undemocratic. I quite agree that, yes, some people who are saying it's unconstitutional. It's not everything that we'll begin to see. It has to be written there in the Constitution. Let me quickly give you an example. The Constitution of Nigeria, none of the Constitution of the political parties that I know specifies in writing that if today I am a presidential candidate nominated by my party from northern part of Nigeria, that my running mate has to come from the southern part of Nigeria and vice versa. It's not written anywhere. But if today, as a citizen of Kano, I become a presidential candidate, and I tell you that my running mate is from Kaduna, or is from Sokoto, or is from Bauchi, without referring to anybody or any constitution, you'll say, I'm crazy, I'm mad. It doesn't work, it doesn't follow. So there is this question of understanding, common sense understanding. You don't have to get it written anywhere. Let me quickly also give you another example. The Electoral Act provides that the president is to nominate national commissioners of INEC 2 per zone. It stops at that. It didn't say these two must come from the zone from two different states. If the president decides to pick a sister and a brother from the same family and nominate them from X zone, he has not violated any constitution. But the example we had not too long ago of our sister Loretta was not disqualified because she wasn't capable, because she was not qualified, and so on. The issue was that of morality. I am in the committee of INEC. We discussed this and we brought it to the floor of the Senate. The issue was that there was already a citizen of Delta State as a national commissioner in INEC. And Loretta happened to come from Delta State as a second nominee. To complete the two, the president needs to nominate from a particular zone, that is South-South, for example. We said, no, this is not on. But if the federal government or the president decides to challenge this in court, I think it's likely to win because the Constitution or the Electoral Act said 2 per zone. It didn't say these 2 must come from A state and B state. But everyone will agree. Why will the 2 come from the same state? So this is issues of common sense. So those of us reducing all of these things, that unless something is written in the Constitution, you cannot place it on the table. The issue of 6 geopolitical zones is nowhere in the Constitution of Nigeria today. But tell me, what will you do today politically in our democratic processes without referring to the 6 geopolitical zones? People spit fire. If there are things to be shared and you share it among 4 zones and 2 or 1 are left out, there will be an outcry that this is not fair distribution. And yet, the Constitution hasn't such a provision that whatever you do, you must consider all of these 6 geopolitical zones.
All right, Senator, just give us a moment. We'll return to that train of thought. Hope you don't lose it when we return. Just give us a moment. We'll be back. Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Senator Ibrahim Shekara will still have him with us in our studios in Abuja. You know, concerning that point that you were making about what should be done. There are those who think, isn't there a cost? Because they've looked at the circumstances at the moment concerning distribution of projects, allocation of resources, personnel drawn from different parts of the country, and many of them just thought that justice has not been seen to have been done, given the fact that we are a diverse country. And so how we leverage on that is a different kettle of fish entirely. So if we look at that question in isolation, we may be missing the point, saying, well, describing it as you've said, a gang up. So in the circumstance, how should it have been approached?
Chamberlain, you see, there is nothing wrong in various parts of Nigeria agitating for one thing or the other. My quarrel is the gang up where you take a stand, it must be this, it must be that. We need to go to the table and discuss. There are many issues. We are still a growing nation. We are still trying to understand ourselves. We are still trying to create an environment of better understanding. Some of these issues are as a result of having wrong people in court, because what we require now is a fair deal. Let everybody feel that there is some sense of belonging, and it's entirely the responsibility of the leadership at various levels, in particular at the national level, to show this transparently, that every part of Nigeria matters, every geographical location, regardless of ethnic, religious, and whatever. We need to have some sense of belonging. The ordinary Nigerian is not expecting too much from the leadership. What he's expecting is show of concern to justify there is the fairness in the deals of government. And as I said, this is attitudinal. We have sufficient laws in the Constitution, in the various legislation to guide us to do all of this. Unfortunately, we are still trying to see it done properly. So I think the problem is as a result of not getting the commitment, the determination, and to show it transparently through our actions, as you rightly said, allocation of national resources in terms of projects, in terms of programs. People need to see it done. Justice is not just to do justice, but it must be seen to have been done. So I quite agree we need to do what I call restoration of confidence in governance. We need to restore the confidence of the Nigerian citizens to the issue of governance. And this is not just left to the federal level. Even at the state level, we need to do quite a lot to generate this concern. So the Constitution requires us in many places to ensure spread in all government business. And this is where the challenge comes in. And while we are making
if I could just put it this way,
to make sure there is this.
Since the subject matter is being discussed, and you think, well, there could be better approach to that. So yes, perhaps in consideration of those approach that you have suggested, I mean, all of those notwithstanding, where do you think, what part of the country do you think the next president of the country should come from in the interest of equity, justice, so that it would have been seen to have been done?
Well, you see, I've said it before. As far as the party I belong is concerned, the APC, my proposal is that now that President Buhari is from this part, is from the northern part of the country, he has done his 8 years, let's beam the search of the searchlight to the southern part of Nigeria. Not because we don't have enough competent people up north. I don't really subscribe to the argument that if you say, okay, let the other part of Nigeria produce the leader, that does not mean you are throwing to the dogs the issue of competence, the issue of credibility, and so on. While I agree we should go for the best and therefore throw it open regardless of which part of the country, but we must also be mindful of the aspect of the sense of belonging. You see, we must be mindful of the perception to give some sense of belonging to every part of Nigeria. I subscribe to the view that we should be talking of the North and South, but where I disagree with the Southern governors is coming together to gang up and say it must be our case. I think this is purely the party affairs. I am aware, I don't know whether it is still there, the PDP had it in its constitution, there's rotational presidency between the North and the South. Other parties left it open. So whether it is written or not written, we must bring on board what I still insist, the constitution of common sense, some rationality, some understanding. This will not lead us to probably throwing away attributes of competence, of capability, and getting the right person on board. We are still growing, we are still managing this democracy that is just 20 or so years old, and we must continue to build it up. If we had remained where continued with where we were in the 50s and the 60s without the various military interventions, I'm sure we probably would have overcome all of this. But since we got so many interruptions, we still have to continue to manage the situation by giving every part of Nigeria some sense of belonging. But my argument is that we must not do this at the point of threat, that it must be me, it must be you, it must be he, him. We need to come together, and I think this is more of political parties' issues. That's why I said, if, for example, APC governors in the South believe that this is the time the South should produce the president, they should approach their colleagues in APC and discuss it in the boardroom, in-house matter, and let them sort it out. If it is the business the concern of the party consensus, that this is where the party chairman should go, this is where the president should go, and so on. If you are saying we should not take into consideration where we should try to balance up the president of the federation, why are we doing the same thing even the political leadership? I'm aware one of the requirements of INEC to get a party registered is its national officers must be so well spread across 2/3 of the states of the federation. This is just to ensure that the leadership of all political parties will have enough representation from different of the country. Why don't we argue that anybody can come and be chairman and be secretary? We are doing this balancing. If you take chairman, this one takes secretary, this one takes treasurer, and so on, at the leadership of the parties. All the parties do this. So the same thing applies even in governance. We should try to accommodate difference of parts of Nigeria. Where my point of disagreement with the gang up groups like the Southern governors is coming to gang up and say it must be our time. No, this is wrong. It's purely party issues, and I ask the political parties to go into their boardrooms and sort these things out among themselves. It's not about regional gang up of either south, east, north. I think this will not give us the best of the unity that we are aspiring to have in this country.
It's interesting that, there are 2 times the Southern governors have come together to talk about this issue. The first was the Lagos Declaration, where the word should was used, and then the Enugu Declaration, where the word must was used. Maybe it was an error, I don't know, but I'll leave that to politicians to do.
No,
but,
I think it's not even the issue of the words that bothers me. Whether you say should, whether you say must, you see, I still insist zoning or balancing or the spread of political office holders through the elective offices is purely a party business.
And not something for governors.
Where you now bring... So
Yeah,
because if the southern governors gang up, tomorrow another group will gang up and say it must be us.
Okay, but essentially what you're saying is it is something that politicians, party politics should deal with, and not, governors who are in office, who are supposed to foster national integration. Because that's what Section 15, sub 2 of the Constitution says. National integration shall be actively encouraged, while discrimination on the grounds of place of origin, sex, religion, status, ethnic or linguistic association, or ties shall be prohibited. In your opinion, it would seem like, some elements like this is your belief and so many others is that national integration should be encouraged. But it would seem, Your Excellency,
Absolutely.
that this sentiment of the Constitution is not even being trickled down to the people in the various localities all over the nation. And one wonders why, this kind of ideology that is being discussed at the high levels of governors, of presidency and all, they don't seem to be taken down to the people in the localities, in the different localities, even though every politician is from one ward or another. This national integration thing, do you think we're doing a significant work in ensuring that it gets down to the people at the various localities, especially at the ward levels, in order to foster this whole national integration thing we're talking about?
Well, I think, you see, in the process of implementing this national integration, I quite agree with you that it has to trickle down to the lowest level. But the leadership has the responsibility of speaking for the people. That's why you have people elected to represent them. It's not a matter that you go to the villages, to the wards, to ask them whether where will the presidency go, or where will the office of the governor go, and so on. And I want to correct the impression that I'm not quarreling with the fact that governors are discussing the issue of where the president will come. My quarrel is that they should not be ganging up on regional basis. I'm sure if you talk to all the governors, they may hold different opinions, which is democratic. And, but that does not mean they should gang up, and whether they use the word should or shall or must is immaterial.
But Senator, there were those who think that
regional group to do.
There are those who think that this is not the first time that this kind of meeting is holding, because just before the 2015 elections, Mr. John Kerry was in the country, and he held a meeting with groups including northern governors, both of the PDP and the opposition party, and then it was perceived as though, wait a minute, what's going on here? Why is that kind of meeting holding? So people refer to that as well as one of those scenarios. And so when this happened, they wonder, why is it that some sections seemed not to be happy with this when a similar thing occurred with John Kerry at the time?
No. I think, you see, it's the coming together. There's nothing wrong in coming together from a particular side of the country to discuss issues of national interest, but not really putting it on the table. This has to be, this is right, this must be done. My argument, Chamberlain, is still that we need to discuss in-house within our parties. Issue of zoning any of these positions, elected positions, even at the state level. I am aware of many states in Nigeria today where you have the arrangement, if the governor this time is from this senatorial zone, the argument is that it has to be the next senatorial zone. All these things are sorted out, trickling down, even up to the level of the local governments, up to the ward, trying to do this sense of belonging. I'm not saying it's totally wrong for various groups in different parts of Nigeria to get together to discuss issues of common interest. But while doing that, we must be mindful of the interest of others, and we must be mindful of the words we use, and coming together. Governors are very prominent people in the scheme of things in governance. They are leaders, so they must be careful in coming together to make some pronouncements that will amount to instigating the general public to take a stand and see it as a regional fight. That is my quarrel. They should be discussing some of these things in the House across board. There's nothing wrong at Governors Forum meeting, the 36 of them, putting all of these in table. They're all mature and responsible people. The fact that they got to the level of being elected as governors, we see them as responsible people. They can sit together and discuss and beat the table in the boardroom and come to some consensus and understanding, so that we want to see the 36 of them emerging and giving one position and advising their respective political parties.
Well, Senator, that will be very interesting if they can all take one position. Because in the democracy, I mean, you will expect several people to disagree about certain things. In fact, as a former governor yourself, there's this matter that's also making the rounds, because, I mean, we have to wind down in the next couple of minutes. But when it has to do with that Executive Order 10, that the governors were not exactly happy with the federal government about, where they were supposed to deduct money from source for the local governments, talking about financial autonomy. So do you think that, for instance, that was the best way to have approached that?
Well, I think I am for the total autonomy of the local government. And with or without any law, I implemented it. I want to immodestly say that for the 8 years that I led the government of Kano State, I never was held any 1 naira of any of my 44 local governments. The day we collect the details of the allocation to the local governments, immediately the commissioner and the accountant general returns back from the Abuja allocation meeting. The next day, we call all the chairmen and give out checks and release all of their funds. So I think I was surprised when there was this quarrel of autonomy or no autonomy of the local government. This is almost given. I didn't wait for any agitation. I didn't wait for any any executive order, presidential order to tell me to release the funds of the local government. All we did through the State Assembly, we released all of their funds, but we came up with some legislation to guide their operations, to guide the spending, the project, and all was well for the 8 years that were there. And by extension, I was also releasing all of the monies belonging to the judiciary and the State Assembly. We, at the end of every quarter, we release all of their monies for the next quarter. So that too, we didn't have to wait until the assembly staff go on strike, the judiciary going on strike. I really subscribe to allowing them to operate through their own funding as provided by the Constitution. So I'm totally for the autonomy of the local governments and the various other sectors of government, the judiciary and the legislature. And I'm happy for the 8 years I did this. I implemented this to the fullest.
All right, Senator Ibrahim Shekarau, former governor of Kano State, former minister of education, we do thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, well, back in a moment. Stay with us.
Our original priorities for 2020 were to continue stabilizing our economy following the deep recession while restoring peace in areas confronted with security challenges. But the COVID-19 pandemic and its devastating impact on all nations meant we needed to shift gears and re-strategize. Nigerians came together as one to fight against COVID-19. It is this attitude, and by the special grace of God, we continue to survive the pandemic as a nation and indeed provide leadership and example at regional and international levels. The doomsday scenario predicted for our country never came. Even as the Delta variant continues to spread, we have built the capacity we need to respond now and into the future. I will therefore appeal to Nigerians not to take COVID lightly. Adhere to public health and social measures. Put your mask on and get vaccinated. We can control this pandemic, but it requires effort on everybody's part. The investments we made in response to COVID-19 will also serve our country to tackle any future disease outbreaks or pandemics.
Welcome back. We've got two gentlemen joining us now. We've got Honorable Bitrus Kaze, who is a former member of the House of Representatives and a member of the PDP, as well as Dr. Amos Gizo, who is a member of the APC. He also contested for the governorship position under the party of NDP at the time. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us on the program today. Let me start with you, Honorable Kaze. Yes, the speech has been delivered. We had our independence timeout, and so moving on, many look to leadership and concerning what's being done, where are we headed. So could you give us your impression of where we are at the moment and the kind of trajectory and where you think we're headed in context of what you've seen?
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to join you on channels this morning again. It's difficult to answer your question, particularly if one takes a look at the speech Mr. President has delivered. For me, I think we are in the middle of nowhere. It's just, when I went through that speech, when I first heard, what agitated my mind is what exactly were the presidential speech writers trying to achieve with this speech? It doesn't touch on the issues that bother Nigerians. It doesn't even touch on the issues of the moment. It is incoherent in some cases, and it left us in the middle of nowhere. And that is exactly what we see in this government.
All right, Dr. Gizo, what about you?
Well, I tend to differ a little from my brother. When I look at the speech, particularly, when you talk about why the celebration of the 1st October, it gives hope that Nigerians actually believe in unification of this country. Nigerians believe that the founding fathers who actually came to give us democracy believe in one Nigeria without looking at ethnic, religious, and regions. And when it comes to celebrations like this, you see everybody is in it. Yes, we know we have a lot of daunting challenges in this country. In my own perspective, I looked at the challenges. The president was very frank in saying, yes, we had trying moments. My only take is that there should be a holistic approach to these trying situations, especially when he spoke about the economy. We definitely know that there is a problem, the problem of inflation, and when he spoke about security, the other thing I have seen that government should be able to take a proactive position is the issue that since it is known that there are people behind this. There should be no scapegoat. Effort should be taken seriously. There should be justice, because the outermass of all this thing is inability of authorities to give justice, decisive justice, no selective justice. If this is done, in this aspect, I think we are moving forward. Let us believe the president, since he had said that they are investigating sponsors of these people who are creating problems for us. Let them be fast, let action be taken, let people be reprimanded, and let the laws take the course. There should be no scapegoat situation. There should be no sacred cows. These are major things that
but Dr. Gizo, is it out of place when, just picking up on what you just said, is it out of place when people say, wait a minute, he talked about sponsors of IPOB and Igboho, but what about sponsors of Boko Haram?
I was taking it holistically. I was not actually looking at just the issue of IPOP or whatever. I'm looking at the entirety of the security situation, especially the Boko Haram, the banditry, kidnapping, the IPOP thing. Since Nigerians, the majority of Nigerians believe in oneness of this country, my only problem is the issue of justice, because it's a national cake. I have seen problem in this country, especially when it comes to distribution of amenities, distribution of appointments, and whatever, that when a Southerner is in government, for instance, you would discover that juicy or grade 1 ministries or whatever are taken to the South. The same thing with when a Northerner is in government. We have to look at this aspect of governance. We should be looking at Nigeria as one, not where there are lopsidedness. Definitely it will create problems.
All right, let me ask you, Honorable Kazi, you may want to respond to a thing or two that you heard Dr. Gizo talk about, but from what you said earlier, when you say that the president's speech didn't touch on issues that concern Nigerians, what issues, in your opinion, were left out?
Talk about security. The president was in Katsina State on what he calls a private visit, right in his presence with his troops against a brigade, a mobile brigade that he moves about with. About 600 boys were kidnapped right in Katsina. Talk about skyrocketing prices. I just returned from Abuja, and I found out that pure water that we used to sell for 5 naira now sells for 25 to 30 naira per sachet. Talk about unemployment. This is a government that promised that it will give stipends to our youth who have finished school, who are graduates, and who have no jobs. But unemployment figures are skyrocketing, even though they try to hide the figures. But we all know that unemployment is worsening. Talk about kidnapping, talk about killing. Here and there, people now bury in mass. And no part of this country is really scored as such. To me, those are the issues that the president should have touched. I have not spoken about our education. I have not spoken about our roads. I have not spoken about our health institutions. I have not spoken about the general well-being of Nigerians. These are the issues that I think our president ought to have addressed, ought to have taken us on some kind of an assessment, what he got in 2015 and the thing he's been able to improve. To me, those important essentials were totally absent. That is why I concluded that he left us in the middle of nowhere.
Okay, but about the health sector, if you look at some part of that speech, he did say, if I could just read from that directly, he says, quote, already The Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority is raising a $200 million fund for the initiative that will complement the Central Bank of Nigeria's ongoing 85 billion naira health sector research and development interventions support scheme for local researchers and development of vaccines and drugs to combat communicable and non-communicable diseases, including COVID-19. How about that for the health sector?
You seem to forget that we are dealing with somebody who first came to contest for presidency like about 20 years ago. President Buhari first appeared on the scene to run for civilian presidency in this country in the year 2003. And since that time, we know he has been blaming every other government. And what I mean by that is that we are dealing with somebody who finds it very easy to make all manner of promises, all manner of goodies, he has promised, including before his arrival on the scene in 2015. But if you look at his history, how many of those promises has he kept? How many of them has he fulfilled? And so if we are now talking about some 20 or $200 billion funding initiative, you forget that the word initiative is just a plan, it's just a promise, it's just an intent. And we are talking of somebody who is already 6 years in office in a two-term of 8 years. If he's not been able to do anything similar to that in 6 years, what do you think he'll be able to achieve in the next 2 years? At the end of the next 2 years, it'll be another time for blaming PDP. It'll be another time for blaming Jonathan. It'll be another time for blaming President Obasanjo for not performing. And he's been here for 6 years. And then at the end of his tenure, we are talking of yet another promise of another initiative. It's all promises, my brother. I don't see anything there.
Gizo, you may want to respond to this. He's talking about the performance of your party over the last 6 years and counting.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm not a prophet of doom. And of course, if anyone makes a promise, we should allow the time to tell. Let me take the issue of in the speech where he spoke about the involvement of the youth in his government. I hope that this last 1.5 years that this government will be, we should be able to test the youth as he has promised. He still has time to be able to see if we are going to bring up our youth to a standard where they would really appreciate the speech. He has made a speech. A president's speech is like a law. So we will be watching. I am very confident that he had given us in this country, look at the way he wants us to go with this solution. I don't believe in violence. I believe in dialogue. And he is looking at a dialogue-based solution to all these actions against secessions and agitations. I think there is a saying that says, if peace would not give us something, I think crisis would not give us. We should be able to imbibe the spirit of oneness, imbibe the spirit of being together, imbibe the spirit of believing in Nigeria, imbibe the spirit of doing things so that we will be looked different. If I had my opportunity in this country, I would definitely state this, that in our forms, issues like tribe, religion should be removed. So,
okay, so just a minute. When Honorable Kazi, what he said is that at the moment, he says, well, 6 years on, he's looked at what is on ground. And so he wonders that some of these hugely important components that the president announced in that speech that will kick on. So he is concerned, Honorable Kazi is concerned that, well, look, can we actually achieve this in this time, the remaining time that he's got? Because, I mean, you know, pretty soon you may just have a lot of political activity kick on and there'll be a lot of focus. People that are supposed to execute may be distracted. And so he thinks, what is the assurance that these will be achieved, or at least major steps will be taken within that time frame?
Yes, the president is an exiting president, so he has complete time for himself. He's not going in for any election, so I believe he will concentrate to see that he hands over to the next administration perfectly. There are governors that I have seen, I don't want to mention names, that I have seen in their states, what they have done in 1 year, some governors in 4 years have not been able to do. If there is that political will to drive what one has said, I am confident that it could be achieved between this period. And of course, he has mentioned, I said I'm not a prophet of doom, he has mentioned too that he has increased the level of credit to the poor and the vulnerable to be able to kickstart businesses, small businesses. Let's wait and see if that is done. And he had equally said he had allowed for the recruitment in the police and in the army. Let us see as these ones come to bear. He had said so many good things that I know they are achievable between the period of now and 1.5 years, especially as he's an exiting president.
So would it be out of place for the president to say, well, maybe to his cabinet and say, listen, ladies and gentlemen, now I want to focus. I've announced, I have the speech that I made in terms of what else I want to deliver. So by January, if there's anybody who is thinking about going into any political office whatsoever, you may please just take a bow and go so that I know who I have left with me to deliver and, as you say in politics, finish strong.
Honestly, you put the words in my mouth because that was what I was just going to say. And it looks like that is his body language, since he says he's going to bring youth into the administration so that they can look at the tail end of it and prepare a ground for whoever comes after that. So I just want to state clearly that those of them who would be engaged in wanting to go in for elections, they should give way. They should just give way with a very good time so that they can bring in new hands that will work with him, those that are not interested in going into elections immediately. I think that will help Mr. President in concluding. The saying says that it is not how well you start, it is how well you end. So I am sure if he has the right hands with him, and if he changes certain criminals that people think they are there, which he had mentioned almost everything in this speech, if he changes and he has new people to work with him, the country will be transited better.
Well, Honorable Kaze, there are those who would believe that as far as they are concerned, Nigerians can't wait for another 1 year or two. They want results now. Some of the promises that the president has made, there are things that he cannot do all by himself. For instance, when he talked about bringing 100 million people out of poverty over 10 years. He said that, was it in 2018 or so? And part of what he said at that time is that there needed to be collaboration with the states in order for that promise to be fulfilled. Across party lines, beyond the politics of it, do you see the kind of collaboration necessary between the federal and state governments to ensure that this promise of pulling Nigerians out of poverty, creating an enabling environment for jobs to be created by this private sector, do you see that collaboration happening strongly enough?
When you run to be a president of a huge republic like the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and you run for 12 years before you actually take office as president, you ought to have your plans. You ought to have your game in your hands. You ought to know that becoming the president of a country like Nigeria entails working with not only the governors, the National Assembly, ministers, and indeed even local government chairmen. Are we not trying to say that President Buhari came up to become a president of Nigeria without any plan? Didn't he know that he would work with the governors before promising Nigerians that by within the next 10 years, we will be out of poverty, 100 million Nigerians will be out of office. Didn't he know about it? Didn't he think for himself that he needs to collaborate, that he needs to get people on board, irrespective of party, tribe, or region, or religion? Didn't he think about it? Like you said, actually, I'm one of those that have lost faith with the presidency. That is, if I had any faith in the first place, because I never trusted, I never believed, and by the grace of God, we have been vindicated that Buhari would perform. We never believed that, and it is shown clearly. I mean, we are talking about somebody